Thanks, Claire. That was not the introduction that I submitted.
You said yes.
First, some bookkeeping. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. First, I want to thank Claire Golick for inviting me for this watershed moment and the organizers of the conference. I want to thank my team who actually does the work. And I mostly check email and go to conferences. And then finally, 2 warnings. My PowerPoint is very glitchy. It's telling me it's corrupted, it's not feeling well, it doesn't save. So I have some annotated cocktail napkins up here, and I'm fully prepared for this to crash. And finally, I know this is not okay, but I have a lot of photos of animals. So I'm going to let you know when you can avert your eyes or leave the room. My talk is really not so much about plants. I feel like I left the plant kingdom, lost my green card many, many years ago because I don't have the gynobasic style, the free central placentation. I don't look at plants a lot. I look more at ecosystems, forests, mountains, watersheds. And so today's talk is really more about ecosystems and about translational botany than it is about plants themselves. So with that, I'm also going to walk around just to stay awake and keep you on your toes. I broke my talk down into some basic questions. So getting right into it, the what. What we want to do is restore as many riparian acres and river miles of riparian habitat as we can. And we're focusing on the lower Mad River and the lower Eel and Van Duzen rivers in Humboldt County. My team covers the whole north coast from the Oregon border down to Mendocino County. If you saw Bruce Orr and Friends' lovely article in the last Fremonti about riparian habitat, a question would come up, well, what do you mean by riparian habitat? And they did a lovely job of saying that it really depends on where you are around the state. If you're in the headwaters of the Trinity River, it could be a bunch of sedges. If you're in Round Valley or if you're in Willits, it could be valley oak. If you're down in Southern California, Washington palm. Riparian habitat is really the habitat around a stream. However, for many of us, there's the so-called classic riparian habitat. Of what's riparian habitat? It's willows, it's alders, it's cottonwoods. So to the question of what are we talking about with riparian habitat? Or do you mean just any habitat around a river, or do you mean willows, cottonwoods, and alders? The answer is yes. And that this is what we have up on the north coast that we're mostly talking about: willows, cottonwoods, alders. Red alder in particular on the coast, black cottonwoods, much taller, upper canopy tree, way above the red alders and the willows. Another question is, what is restoration? Somebody asked me the other night, well, restoration, how do you know what to plant? And I thought, I'm not talking about planting things necessarily at all. I'm really talking about ecosystem processes. This is about river restoration, not just plant restoration. It's about channel migration, the river moving around. It's about bank erosion. It's about reconnecting rivers with their floodplains. It's about moving from simplicity to complexity. The bottom line is, I know this is heterodox, but you heard it here. Flooding is okay. Bank erosion is actually okay. It is not a sign of disease and ill health in rivers when they flood, when they erode their banks. And this is an important feature. If you just go out and plant cottonwoods, that alone is not restoration if you don't restore the hydrological processes. Those cottonwoods will never have babies unless they have some bare mineral soil for the seeds to germinate. So basically, we've created with our riparian habitat observatory is a river liberation front in a way. And this is the lower Van Duzen River. We're in Humboldt County, and I don't expect that you can see the legend here, but basically this is a channel migration zone map, and the big blue line is the channel in 1855. And these are all the different channels from the 1940s right up till today. Well, how do you restore a system that's that dynamic? It really matters a lot. The other thing about restoration is if you could just end up with a bunch of invasive species. So it's not just about planting things, it's not about restoring things, it's really about the whole mix, again, of ecological processes. So to answer the question, where? We're up in the Pacific Northwest, the Alaskan part of California, right in there. To drill down a little bit more, we're here. This area, the green spot between Humboldt Bay, north and south. Drill down a little bit more. And the rivers we're really focusing on are the lower Eel River right here, the third largest river in California. And the Van Duzen River is one of the lower tributaries of the Eel. And the Mad River is right above Humboldt Bay. Humboldt Bay, of course, California's second largest estuary, a biodiversity hotspot. The important thing about these river systems is, for a lot of the critters, it's all one ecosystem. They are part of Humboldt Bay. The birds, the ducks, the critters, and dare I say, even the plants, they don't know whether they're in the Eel River or the Mad River or the Humboldt Bay ecoregion. They're very much an interconnected ecosystem. To drill down, map a little bit more, what the important thing on this slide is that we have begun mapping these lower rivers, which are mostly either agricultural lands right now or industrial timberlands. The dark green is all industrial timberlands. There's development here at the city of Fortuna. And the yellow is where we have restoration opportunity. It's a 500-foot buffer along the rivers. Here also, I'll talk about Cock Robin Island and restoration that's occurring right there. So, we've determined that we have well over 2,000 acres of land that can be restored back to natural ecological processes and riparian habitat. And this is a shot of the previous, of the channel migration zone. So this is the lower Van Duzen River, and you'll see this is industrial timberlands to your left. Okay, there it is. Not much we can do about that. It's under an HCP, managed by CAL FIRE. But what about all the land to the right? Look how much riparian habitat there is. Virtually none. Ample opportunity to get some good work done here. Okay, so why? Why are we doing this? We're doing it because California has lost somewhere around 80 to 90% of its riparian habitat in the last 150 years, and we continue to lose riparian habitat every year. Many of our rivers are trashed in many different ways. They're either dammed or diverted. We want to do this because our riparian habitat are in strong interconnection and part of a larger matrix of wetlands and upland forest habitat. We want to do it because our riparian habitats have significant cultural, spiritual, social, and economic importance to our First Nation people. We want to do it because the department has an ecosystem-based policy. We want to restore riparian habitat because it comports with our coho recovery plan, a state and federally listed critter, and because it comports with our 2018 biodiversity initiative, which has been talked about here a lot, because it fits right in with our California Water Action Plan, because it's an important part of drought adaptation planning. Speaking of our state wildlife action plan, on the North Coast we have more goals than this, but three important ones. On the North Coast, by 2025, we want to increase riparian habitat by 5% over 2015 levels. 5% over 2015 levels. Same for connections with floodplains, same for increased miles of natural hydrologic regime, really tall order. We care about riparian habitat because some people like to eat salmon. And they hang out there. All right, sorry, animals. Just look the other way. Go that. Of course, we have numerous species of special concern, animals in California that are trending in the wrong direction toward state or federal listing. That includes 55 species of fish, numerous reptiles and amphibians, including the charismatic western pond turtle, the willow flycatcher, yellow-billed cuckoo. Okay, that's it. You can look back now. Oh, just kidding. And bats. How are we going to bat for bats? Half of California bats are species of special concern, and they're very much denizens of our riparian habitats because of water, because of food, because of roosting habitat. So, some of the reasons we care. All right, a few more slides. Reptiles and amphibians, lots of them. They hang out in riparian habitat. And there was a talk earlier, yesterday, about Carex barberi and keeping common species common. I want to throw a shout out to Carex barberi. Not a rare plant by any means, but one that has been devastated throughout California through alterations of our riparian ecosystems. Beer. Yeah. We care about properly functioning ecosystems and riparian habitat and rivers because we care about our beer. We get our water from our rivers and we get our beer from our rivers. Think about it. Eel River Brewing Company, Mad River Brewing Company, Six Rivers Brewing Company, Lagunitas Creek Brewing Company. We care about them because they're just plain old beautiful. They're places we want to go and hang out. And therefore, they're not just wildlife corridors, they're human corridors, connecting people with places. Okay, into the how, with 5 minutes left. We're doing this both, how to put it, we're doing this both systematically and with a concentrated, deliberative effort, and we're also opportunistic. When the money comes our way or when the opportunities are there, we seize on them. So this is a $150,000 check. I don't expect you to be able to read it. Landed on my desk last week. People were in a big tizzy. What do we do with this $150,000 check? Well, it's to do riparian restoration. It was a violation that actually Claire Golick was involved in early on. There's the money, and we're going to plant and restore. Another awful violation on the Lower Van Duzen River, which is right along here, again, Lower Van Duzen. Claire Golick was very involved in this for years. She was out there again and again and again with wardens. This is going to be restored. The Department of Justice got involved, and this person is going to clean up their act and restore this part of the river, right along here. Okay, last year we got $250,000 from PG&E to restore Cockrovin Island. We're paying $50,000 an acre to do it. That's not the way to do restoration, $50,000 an acre. We're trying to be more strategic with our mitigations, especially with Caltrans and advanced mitigations. They have a lot of mitigation needs. We need to be able to better direct those needs in ways that we want. Gravel mining is a huge industry up on the North Coast. It happens on all the rivers, every single one. We have a great need and love affair with concrete and aggregate. There are opportunities, actually, to restore riparian habitat because higher up on these old terraces, they are yellow star thistle and baccharis, rather rural areas, low quality habitat. But if we have the gravel companies come in and skim them and lower it where you can connect the bar with the capillary fringe, income willows and alders and cottonwoods. And we're also taking it all the way down to the mouth to the ocean. We have the Ocean Ranch Unit. This is a 900-acre wildlife area owned and managed by the department. And we're doing an 800-acre restoration, both of the dune systems to remove Ammophila from the dunes, and of the estuary to take to manage and eradicate the dense flowered cordgrass, the Spartina. Okay, so I gave you a little bit of the who, and that includes the Department of Fish and Wildlife. The when is both, honestly, this is both aspirational and concurrent. Obviously, we're doing a lot right now, and a lot of this is what we want to do in the next few years. we've undergone a bit of a paradigm shift. My team does regulation. We issue incidental take permits, we do CEQA project review, and we do restoration and enhancement. We're trying to emphasize regulation, restoration over regulation, pushing recovery, moving from permitting to purchasing land, from being reactive to being proactive, to taking grant money and utilizing it rather than just reviewing grants. This means land acquisition, that means conservation easements, it means integrated land use planning. Okay, I think I've had this thrown at me of like, well, we want to bring our habitat back to the Pleistocene, and as if people don't live in these areas. So I just want to talk about reconciliation ecology just a little bit, because we recognize that many people live in our riparian habitats and we're not going to kick them out. We recognize that our riparian habitats are biodiversity hotspots if you go to the local farmers market. This is where we get our produce, on the Trinity River, on the Mad River, on the Eel River. They're covered with farms. And so if we like our food, and if we like our grapes, and we like our milk, well then we have to kind of deal with that in some way, don't we? We need to recognize that. So moving to a conclusion, large-scale restoration, it is the confluence of science and public policy. What does that mean? It means that we need to find solutions rather than blame. It means that we need to make connections. It means we need to connect plants with people and people with the outdoors. Better integrating human communities and natural communities, state agencies with local agencies. Combining large-scale riparian and river restoration, what does it mean? It means we need willing landowners, because we're mostly talking about private lands. It means talking about flood hazard reduction, helping people out. It means public access, and it includes the cities and the counties. Working lands, again, farmers, ranchers, listed species recovery, legislative support, lots of grant funding, other people's money, restoration the old-fashioned way. Finally, it means no child left indoors. We need to get kids out on these systems. If we're not enjoying them and having fun, we're not doing a good job. Finally, I haven't heard this yet, but absolutely, in our opinion, in our mind, the data is there to show that if we can restore, recover, and enhance these ecosystems, we're doing the same thing for our own human communities, promoting resilience, connectedness, and cohesion between the cities and the North Coast, and furthermore, reducing juvenile delinquency, obesity, heart disease, getting people outside, keeping families together, connecting communities. It has all of those benefits. And Kaiser Permanente and other insurance firms have looked at this and found when people can get outside to these places, it has these positive health effects. Finally, I just want to say that we are absolutely convinced that what we do in Eureka affects our regional headquarters in Reading, and what that does affects Reading, Sacramento. Basically, what happens in California absolutely impacts what happens across the country and the rest of the world. And so we take this very seriously. Thank you. I think there might be time for one last question. Just one last